before the internet, before anything. Imagine these civilizations, right? That's how the Arabs were. Now imagine somebody comes from the middle of Africa. Now in our times we have internet and phone, that's a problem, but suppose we didn't have that. Suppose 100 years ago. Somebody comes from the jungles of Africa and he begins speaking about the histories of Europe and the histories of the Americas and Christopher Columbus. And he began speaking about ancient civilizations that nobody has heard of in the middle of Africa. The question arises, how did this person get these stories? And they all turn out to be true. Now you have to understand this is exactly what happened with our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Allah says in the Quran, you weren't there when Musa argued with Fir'aun. You weren't there when the scribes and the scholars of the temple were arguing who would take care of Maryam. You weren't there when this and that happened. How did you know this? The Prophet from the middle of nowhere, from the deserts of Arabia, he comes forth and he begins telling people about ancient civilizations, about Rome, about Persia, about the Bani Israel, and the Arabs of Mecca never interacted with the Jews. Remember, Mecca had no interaction with the Jews. There are no Jewish rabbis, there are no scribes, there are no scholars, and our Prophet is telling them about Prophet Yusuf, about Prophet Musa, about Prophet Sulaiman, and all that happened. You have to understand, for the Arabs, this is not their culture. They've never heard of Sulaiman and Musa. They only know Ibrahim and Ismail, right? It's not their culture, Ishaq and the children of Ishaq. But Allah Azza wa Jalla reveals all of these stories, and they turn out to be verifiable, true. And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions this to be a miracle. Also, of the miracles of the Quran is the content of the Quran, the belief in the Quran, the laws of the Quran, the theology of the Quran. It's a perfect theology. And we can go on and on about this as well. The laws of the Quran, the Sharia. We firmly believe that the Sharia is the most perfect code of law, the only code that will guarantee the closest peace and harmony on earth. This is what we believe, and the Quran came with this Sharia. Of course, there are many other types of miracles as well. We're quickly going over them. One of the more popular topics is the scientific miracles, right? People in our times love this type of topic. And this is indeed very true. To me, what is astounding about this aspect is not that the Quran tells us scientific miracles. The Quran does not mention so many things. What is amazing is that modern science never contradicts the Quran. In other words, the descriptions of the water cycle, the descriptions of the development of the embryo, the descriptions of nature around us, according to the knowledge of science at the time, if the Prophet ﷺ had been fabricating the Quran, a'udhu billah, he would have said biology of the time, but he didn't. The wordings used always fit with modern science. They never contradicted. And this is absolutely amazing. How Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions such clear-cut facts in the Quran that prove modern science, and modern science do not contradict it. And this is an indication that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of the miracles of the Quran, we'll just mention two more and then open the floor for a question and answer, inshallah. Of the miracles of the Quran is one that all of us sitting here can appreciate and realize, and that is the effects that the Quran has on those who listen to it. The effects that the Quran has on those who listen to it. And this is amazing because many of us sitting here are non-Arabs. I too once upon a time had no idea. I am ethnically non-Arab, but now I understand Arabic. But I remember clearly my days as a teenager and a young man, I had no clue about Arabic. I didn't speak Arabic. I wasn't born into an Arab household. And yet, I remember clearly standing behind the Imam. And I know that the Imam is talking about Allah's mercy, Jannah. I can feel it. I remember standing behind the Imam and knowing that the verses are verses of punishment, verses of adab, and they're affecting me. I know that you don't have to be an Arab and know Arabic to appreciate the beauty of the Quran. That is why many of us who are non-Arabs, we put the Quran on in the car, in our iPods, in our MP3s, and it brings a sense of sukoon. It brings a sense of peace to us. Now it is amazing that this is a language we don't understand. And yet it has an impact on us. It moves us to tears. Sometimes we listen to Abdul Basit bin Shawi and say, Subhanallah. We don't even know what he's saying, right? Have no clue. But the impact of that sound is something that, wallahi, it is superhuman. It is clearly something that is beyond what a man can do, right? This is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, it's easy to say that because we believe the Quran to be the speech of Allah. But that is the reality, isn't it, right? The Quran is not our speech, it is the speech of Allah. So when we hear it, it has an impact on us that we cannot describe. And how many are the people to this day, they convert to Islam because they heard the Quran being recited. To this day. Forget the content, forget the style. It's simply the voice of the Quran being recited. This is a miracle, the likes of which we will never be able to truly understand and appreciate. And the last miracle that I'll mention is a miracle that we always overlook. It is a miracle that we stare at it in the face and we don't realize it's a miracle. It's a miracle we interact with on a day-to-day basis, but we never ever appreciate how much of a miracle this is. And that is the miracle of memorizing the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The miracle of being a hafiz, or even memorizing 10, 15 juz, 5 juz, 1 juz. The miracle of being able to memorize this book. Now, the reason why we don't appreciate it is because we are born into this miracle, right? Since we were born, well, those of us who have not converted, those of us who are born into Muslims, we always meet hafiz. This is hafiz of the masjid, this is hafiz that. Many of us, we have to memorize 1 juz, half a juz. All of us have to memorize some of this. Many of us memorize 2, 3 juz. So we take it for granted. However, let me ask you, how many teachers of English have memorized the poems that they teach? How many professors of Shakespeare have memorized Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet, word for word and letter for letter, cover to cover? Sure, they memorized phrases, bits and phrases, but could they close the book, Romeo and Juliet, and close their eyes and say, okay, Shakespeare begins this and this, and it goes this, and they recite, how much is Romeo and Juliet? 50 pages, right? Could they recite to you Romeo and Juliet, or Macbeth, 30 pages? Could they recite to you Macbeth, cover to cover? Even if they're professors for 30 years, wallahi, you're not going to find people like this. And if you do, one person out of millions and billions, right? Now, bring forth a 7-year-old kid in our community. Have him recite anywhere from the Quran, and he'll be able to do it. The guy, this little kid, doesn't even speak Arabic. He doesn't even know what he's memorized. But he will recite to you sentence by sentence, word by word, letter by letter, haraka by haraka, sukun by sukun. We take it for granted. Well, like, look at the 600 pages, right? Now, if I were to give you a book in Japanese and Chinese, say, here, memorize this, you will just laugh at me. Are you crazy? Have you gone mad? You want me to memorize a book in a different language? I don't even understand it. Even if it were my language, English, I couldn't do it. You want me to memorize it in Japanese? Do you understand that's exactly what's happening with the Quran on a daily basis? In every society, every single civilization and culture. People are shocked in our Muslim lands to realize that we have Hafiz schools here in America. We produce Huffaz in our own cities and villages. You can go to the smallest masjids across America, Alaska, Hawaii, you'll find Huffaz of the Quran. In every community, you find Hafiz of the Quran. This Hafiz is a walking miracle. It's a divine manifestation that this book is not a book written by human beings. It is not a book that is something that can be done by human beings. It is a book that is from Allah Azza wa Jalla. And Allah mentions this. بَلْ هُوَ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ فِي صُدُورِ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ. This is a book that is many ayat, that is encompassed, that is within the hearts of the people of knowledge. Allah is saying that the Quran is within the hearts of the people of knowledge. This is a miracle. You cannot be a hafiz of the Quran if the Quran had not been from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every one of you has memorized passages of the Quran. How easy is it to memorize? Wallahi, if you were to try memorizing the same page in your language, word for word, how long would it take you? And how easily you would forget it. But the Quran, it's amazing, isn't it? It's not just amazing, it's miraculous. Right? So when we look at it, really and truly, the Quran is miraculous from so many different angles, so many different ways. Whatever way we look at the Quran, we find something miraculous about it. And that is why, brothers and sisters, I conclude by saying, let us take advantage of this miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us by reciting it, reading it, reflecting over it, believing in it, understanding it, and most importantly, acting upon it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us the true followers of the Quran. May He make us the ummah of the Quran. May He make us the reciters of the Quran. May He make us amongst those whom the Quran intercedes for on the day of of Judgment. May He make us amongst those whom the Quran blesses and raises on the Day of Judgment. May He bless us with this Quran. May He make us amongst the true people of the Quran. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين.
جزاك الله خير Sheikh Yasir. Abu Ammar, do you allow a question or two?
Yes, فضل يا
So, and also, please also, if the sister wants to have a question, so let's try to
Yes.
make it even.
So one from the brothers, one from the sisters, inshallah.
Send
No
one
problem.
of the sisters.
Go ahead with it in the front row.
You mentioned the verse about the rooms, and I'm wondering whether there are other meanings or interpretations of that. Is it just a verse about the future, a kind of miracle about the future, or does it have also implications, to message to Muslims? Why is that future, telling is in the Quran? There must be some other meanings or messages to Muslims.
So the question is there any other message in these verses?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's a moral, there's lots of morals that we can derive from this story. But if you mean some type of hidden message or something, I don't know anything like this. I mean, scholars are a bit hesitant. Generally speaking, scholars within the Sunni tradition are hesitant to read in hidden meanings, right? We don't believe the Quran came بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ in clear Arabic, right? So to read in hidden meanings, Allahu A'lam, most of our scholars don't look at these batin and zahir. This is not something that Sunni scholars generally do. Do the sisters have a question? I don't mind if you say it or write it or anything.